Hi, this is the Business Guy. So we see the atrocities, we see the crazy things happening in Ukraine, the civilians getting killed, the apartment complexes are getting bombed. But what are the Russians being told? What do the Russians know about this war? What are they telling them on the media? What kind of information are they being fed? That's what we're going to talk about. 4 things. And the 4th one will just shock you. So this is from an article I just read in the New York Times. It says, here are 4 falsehoods Russians are told about the war. It says, Russia's international disinformation campaign seemed to flounder in the early days of the invasion, but in Russia, the country's propaganda machine was busy churning out a deluge of misinformation aimed at its own citizens. It says the narrative disseminated online through state-run and unofficial channels has helped create an alternate reality where the invasion is justified and Ukrainians are to blame for the violence. It says to control the narrative at home, Russia has also shut down access to several websites, threatened the news media with long prison sentences for criticizing the war, and there's some evidence that the effort has mollified at least some Russians. So here's what the war looks like to Russians based on a review of state news articles, channels on popular chat app Telegram, and input from several disinformation watchdogs who are monitoring Russia's propaganda machine. In fact, I saw an article today also about this gal who lives abroad. She was calling her Russian friends, and it's like they're cutting off communication because they don't want to hear what she's saying about what's really going on in the war. They're just convinced that Putin's the greatest guy and he's doing this for the good of Russia and that it's a good thing. Crazy. So, by the way, if you appreciate this information, please click like below because YouTube promotes it more. And also, if you haven't already, please click subscribe because I'd like to have you as part of our community. So when more information comes out like this, you'll be up to date right away. And again, 4 things, and please pay attention to number 4 because it'll just shock you. Number 1, after Russian shellings killed Ukrainian civilians, Russia blamed neo-Nazis. That's number 1. So some of the most disturbing images from the war have come from Mariupol, a port city in the southeastern coast, and that's an area where it's a very important strategic place in the Black Sea. And as we've seen on news reports, shelling has battered the region, killing several civilians who were trying to flee the area during what was supposed to be a ceasefire. But the Russians got a different explanation online. It says Ukrainians had fired on Russian forces during the ceasefire, and the neo-Nazis were hiding behind civilians as a human shield, according to the Russian state news website TASS. So that's the story they're being told. Neo-Nazis have been a recurring character in the Russian propaganda campaign for years, used to falsely justify military actions against Ukraine in what Russian officials have called the denazification. And those claims have only continued during the conflict, it says. To explain away the attacks on other Ukrainian apartment buildings, the same article by TASS claimed that neo-Nazis had placed heavy weapons in the apartment buildings while some residents were forcibly kept in their homes, but they provided no evidence, of course, because there isn't any. Russian social media accounts have used a mix of fake and unconfirmed photos showing Ukrainian soldiers holding Nazi flags or photos of Hitler, and an analysis by the Center of Information Resilience, a nonprofit focused on identifying disinformation, showed that the number of tweets connecting Ukrainians to Nazis have soared since the invasion began. It says, propaganda works when it coincides with your existing assumptions, says Pierre Vo, a senior investigator at the Center for Information Resilience. The stuff that chimes into the Nazi stuff is really effective on the population in Russia. So falsehood number 2 being fed to the Russians. After a nuclear facility caught fire, Russians claimed they were protecting it. After Russia attacked the area near the nuclear complex in Zaporozhye, if I got that right, leading to a fire, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine called it nuclear terrorism. But according to a Kremlin statement reported in TASS, the military seized the facility to prevent Ukrainians and neo-Nazis from organizing provocations fraught with catastrophic consequences. Even though Ukrainians heavily fortified the region against an attack, Russian officials claim they already had control of the compound before Ukrainians opened fire. They added that Ukrainians set fire to an adjacent building before fleeing, providing no evidence. Western experts said controlling Zaporizhzhia complex would allow Russia to trigger blackouts or shut down the entire power grid. So that's why they wanted to control it. And the image of Russia as a world protector surfaced again in their media after the country's officials claimed they discovered evidence that Ukraine was working on a nuclear bomb. According to Russian officials, plans for the bomb were uncovered as they abandoned the Chernobyl nuclear plant. And here's a quote in the article. It doesn't even make sense because if you're going to develop a secret nuclear program, you don't do your secret development in a nuclear power plant, Mr. Vo said. But that kind of thing is just being beamed out on Russian state TV. Item number 3, falsehood number 3. After Russia shelled a residential neighborhood, Russians claim that Ukrainians did the shelling. So in attacking Kharkiv, a northeast Ukrainian city bordering Russia, provided additional evidence that Russia had indiscriminately bombed residential neighborhoods. So the Russians bombed the neighborhoods and killed civilians, or according to the Atlantic Council, an American research group. An international criminal court opened an investigation into war crimes after this assault. One attack included heavy shelling where 34 civilians were killed and 285 were injured, according to the Ukrainian State Emergency Service. But Russians, listening to state media or browsing channels on Telegram, heard another story altogether. They said the missiles came from Ukrainian territory. On a Telegram channel for the Russian news site Redovka, one post described how Ukrainian missiles had arrived from the northwest, an area controlled by the Ukrainian military. Russia's Defense Department said it had never attacked cities, instead targeting military infrastructure. And then Russia's Defense Department went on to say they never attacked cities. Instead, they were targeting military infrastructure with high-precision weapons, according to an article in the state-owned news agency RIA Novosti. Here's number 4, the biggest one. This just blew my socks off. After attacks, bloodied civilians, Russians called the injured Ukrainians crisis actors. So what they said is this lady, whose face has been on the news for several days now, they said she was just a prostitute wearing red makeup. So this woman who survived a blast in her apartment building became the focus of a disinformation efforts after her bloodied and bandaged photographs were spread widely throughout newspapers and Western media. The woman was a resident of an apartment complex in Chuhiv near Kharkiv. The photojournalist Alex Laurie captured her photo after the attack, and the image was soon featured on the front pages of newspapers around the world. But Russia's social media falsely described her as a prostitute wearing makeup. And then in another post by War on Facts, a pro-Russian website and Telegram channel that appeared at the start of the invasion, suggested that the blood could be grape juice and the woman could be part of a territorial defense. As evidence, the post included a shot of another woman bearing some resemblance. That image came from a New York Times photograph, which is taken in Kiev. So those are the 4 big lies that the Russian propaganda campaign is churning out and feeding to their population. Please like, subscribe, share this video. Thanks for watching. This is The Business Guy. See you next time.